Okay, this next section here we're going to do is going to be a really small one, but then we're going to jump into three really, really, really important sections. Um, so this is more of a setup lecture to the next three than anything else. Okay, this section is officially titled The U.S. and the Soviet Union. And we know that the U.S. and Soviet Union, superpowers, ideological rivals. The U.S. is democracy and mostly capitalism, kind of capitalism, more capitalism than anything else. And the Soviets are dictatorships and extreme communism, right? The extreme version. And this is going to go on all through the Cold War, 1945 to 1990. But they never really fight each other in a war. And one of the reasons is because they both have nuclear bombs, and neither one want to blow each other up, because you launch one, and I'll launch one, and you launch 10, and I'll launch 10, and all of a sudden, both of our countries are destroyed. Let's not do that, right? Mutual assured destruction, MAD. We mentioned this in an earlier lecture. These people were mad for doing that. It's funny. One of the things about being here at Taft is sometimes that happens. The clocks get a little crazy. They're trying to set the time right. They haven't got it right. Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be talking about this stuff. So it's funny. I was going to mention this story because I grew up in the tail end of the Cold War. Okay, the Cold War, 1945 to 1990. I'm born in 1975. So the very last 15 years I'm alive during, right? And I remember when I was young, I would hear my dad talking to his friends, really young, like 5 to 10 young. And I don't have a great memory of that period, but no one does, right? We're kids. But I remember hearing them talking late at night when I would be in bed. And they would be like, yeah, well, if they dropped a nuclear bomb on us, what if it hit here? What would it do? How far would it hit? And then the radioactive cloud, and would we have to leave? And should we go underground? And how much would the initial explosion hit? And what if it hit downtown? Would it make it into the valley? And well, yeah, maybe not the initial explosion, but the radiation, all of this stuff was common. I would hear it all the time, right? This was kind of part of the Cold War. There's this fear that existed. And for this reason, because of these nuclear bombs, these countries never fought each other. And oddly enough, and I don't know what to say about this theory, I've heard a theory once that this actually works to create peace, that everyone having a nuclear bomb makes it so that, because nowadays it's not just these two countries that have nuclear bombs, right? There's like a bunch of countries that have nuclear bombs: the US, the USSR, China, India, Pakistan, Britain, France, North Korea. Is Iran developing one? Israel probably, right? Even though they don't admit it. But people have said that this keeps countries from fighting each other because you're not going to fight a country that can drop a nuclear bomb on you. And it's a weird theory, but maybe it's true. I don't know. So anyways, these countries never actually fight each other, but instead they get involved in what are called proxy wars. And a proxy war is when one country, and these two small countries usually are fighting each other, and one big country jumps in on one side of the war and the other big country jumps in on the other side of the war. And although they're not actually fighting and they never fought on each other's land, they never attacked each other's cities, they were fighting on a battlefield in a separate country, okay? And they actually had soldiers probably fighting each other, but it never took place in their country. And this is important to understand as we move forward, because these countries where proxy wars take place, and we're going to be talking about 4 main countries in this period, 3 in this section, 1 in the next chapter, are devastated by these wars. And then the people who lived in these countries and had, starting off in Korea, let's say, big US come in and help South Korea because they don't want Korea to turn communist, right? And then China comes in and helps North Korea, and the US and China are actually fighting in Korea. But what about the Koreans? They suffer greatly during this period. Same thing. Well, in Cuba, there's not a lot of fighting in Cuba. But Cuba turns communist, and a lot of people in Cuba are exiled or imprisoned or jailed or hurt because they didn't want communism, and then the U.S. is going to come in and try and flip the government, and then there's the Cuban Missile Crisis and the whole thing, and then the economic sanctions because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the people in Cuba suffered greatly because of these two great superpowers fighting over their land. The same thing is true in Vietnam. The Vietnamese people suffer greatly when war takes place in their land, and in Afghanistan as well. So the people in Afghanistan suffered so badly that a group called the Mujahideen was established, where a guy named Osama bin Laden starts to gain power as he's fighting the Soviets with U.S. help. And then, of course, he has all this money and all these weapons and all this power, and he's going to use it against the U.S. Spoiler alert, September 11th. And then proxy wars, and there were also like other little skirmishes where the U.S. would get its fingers in another country's business if it heard that it was turning communist or socialist. Okay, and a lot of these countries in the Americas, the United States, gets involved in a bunch of Latin American countries' business, killing leaders, starting wars, putting troops on the ground, supporting one guy over the other, giving weapons and money, and fomenting revolution in these countries because we didn't want communism there. And who suffers? The people of these countries suffer greatly, and they don't forget. And they don't forget who made them suffer. The truth is that there are still a handful of proxy wars that are going on in the world today. In the Middle East and in Yemen, where Iran is on one side and Saudi Arabia is on the other, but they're not actually fighting each other. And who suffers? The people of Yemen. So it's not mentioned in the books, and you don't see it in the numbers, but just the entire time we're studying these proxy wars and the impact of this ideological battle between communism and capitalism, just keep in mind that the people who get hurt the most in these battles are the people who live in these countries where these battles are being waged by other countries to control their country.